Welcome to Better PR, a podcast brought to you by PRSA Sierra Nevada. Today's sponsor is In Plain Sight Marketing. Kathie, you want to give us a little bit of detail on that?
Hey, everybody. I'm Kathie Taylor, APR. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of In Plain Sight Marketing in Carson City, Nevada. You can find us at ipsmllc.com.
And today's guests are Jackie and Mikalee of Estipona Group. Do you guys want to give a short intro of yourselves?
Okay, this is, I've just tried where to start. Jackie Shelton, PR. I am Vice President of Public Relations for the Estipona Group, and lots of other things that I'm sure will come up later.
Mikalee?
And I'm Mikalee Byerman, VP of Strategy for the Estipona Group and a freelance writer.
So we wanted to bring you guys in because you kind of operate in this unique space of a virtual agency. And our topic of conversation today is on the exact opposite spectrum of that, where in-person communication and getting as close to in-person communication is so important. In a digital age of texting, emailing, we're off the phone less and less and less. So we wanted to ask you guys, how do you guys feel about operating in that space where you don't see each other every single day, as opposed to going to an office building and saying, like, I see my coworkers every day?
Can I come back to something you said at the beginning, though, first?
For sure.
I feel like it's not the opposite. The fact that we're virtual is not the opposite of voice-to-voice conversation.
Could you elaborate?
Well, I feel like, and I've worked for traditional agencies, I've worked corporate, and I think that you make a lot of assumptions when you work in the same place with people and you see them all the time. And when you don't, when you are seeing each other for meetings maybe once a day or 3 times a week, you don't have the luxury of making those assumptions. And so it's more important than ever than to actually pick up the phone or meet in person.
For sure. So that value is even more added upon.
I think it's more obvious.
Right.
And honestly, I think in our setting, we actually look forward to our meetings so much more. I mean, again, I've been also in the traditional and the virtual, and we actually really do enjoy getting together and talking to each other and picking each other's brains because we don't take it for granted. We're not in the office next to each other or the cubicle next door. We actually have to make an effort to go see each other, which we do a lot.
And we had a brainstorming meeting before we came here. That was hilarious. 4 of us sitting outside Starbucks laughing so hard that we're crying and coming up with really good ideas for our clients. And, that doesn't happen digitally.
Of course.
That kind of...
Well, we do laugh digitally.
Sometimes we laugh digitally.
So these are kind of touching on like a lot of things that we can miss out by even seeing each other every day. Are there any other like great lessons that we could take from you guys working in a virtual agency where you do get that value of, oh, I get to see this person as a pleasure, not just a commitment to my job?
Well, so one thing that we have, and I know other agencies have this, but so we use GLIP, which is our online, it's our virtual office.
Like a Slack.
Mm-hmm. And we have different channels for different clients. And so you can go on and have these conversations on there about different clients. You can brainstorm, you can post. And so when I've worked in traditional agencies before or corporate, you have departments. So like stay in your lane. This is my place. Now somebody will post something and I'll go look, even though it's not necessarily my business, and I may have thoughts about it, or I may say, oh, that's a PR opportunity, where maybe they didn't think about that. So again, in a traditional agency, I feel like if you're not in the meeting and you're not working on that client, you don't necessarily know what's happening with that client. This gives you the opportunity to have more broader knowledge about what goes on in the agency.
Are there any other tools that you guys really rely on as a digital agency to keep that communication? Or is it mainly rely on something like Slack or GLIP or an online-based communication?
I mean, I think that's really, that's the tool for us. But we also, again, are seeing each other so often and I think the other aspect of this is we have to be intentional about making sure we have time to meet. And because in an office setting, creativity tends to happen sort of organically. We have intentional creativity, like intentional brainstorming sessions where we go and say, okay, this is the topic right now. So it really does make us a little more focused on, right now, this is our priority and this is what we have to work towards. And we can't just pick each other's brains randomly because we're like, crossing the office and talking to each other.
But GLIP is part of Ring Central, which is also our video video conferencing.
Yeah.
And so we'll do that sometimes. If it is kind of a, hey, just have a quick question, I might call Mikalee or video with her and we'll have a quick brainstorm like you would in a traditional office. Because again, sometimes you don't have to be together physically, but it's nice to. There are things you can do at email or texting, but it's better to not.
And to that point, I mean, I think there's a stereotype out there that people who work virtually sit around in their pajamas all day and lay around on a couch, and that is actually the antithesis, I think, of what we do. Just because we know that we have to be prepared to talk to clients, we do a lot of video conferencing, we do a lot of interpersonal. I mean, we've definitely talked to each other when we weren't completely done and ready for the day, but that's really the exception because every day, for the most part, we're touching base physically with clients or each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you guys are also bringing up a really key point to all this, is that there's real value in in-person meetings. And even though you guys exist in this digital space and you're constantly communicating through these channels, I mean, it seems like you almost make the most out of every single meeting and may in fact get more out of those meetings than a traditionally based agency or group or even internal PR. Are there any key points that you guys would like to say of how to maybe get the value out of those meetings for somebody who's not in a digital agency, or even some tools for other digital agencies to make advantage of their in-person meetings?
Well, one thing I would say is brainstorming is scary sometimes. When it's like, okay, be creative right now about this idea, and you say something, and then maybe in a digital space, somebody doesn't respond the way that you would like them to respond, and you're like, oh, they don't care about what I said, they don't like it. We make assumptions. In person, I don't know, like for me, I feel a lot safer saying it in person because even if I say it and as I say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was dumb. I can kind of own that it was dumb when I say it out loud, but then also I might say something dumb and then Paige, our creative director, goes, oh wait, but what about this? And she might riff off of that. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not going to happen in email.
And the nice thing about this, Jackie and I are wired almost opposite completely. So she is 92%
extrovert.
And I am 93% introvert. And so what we do, we really do take advantage of being able to speak to all personality types where we're working virtually and also in person, because we recognize that everyone comes at it from a different perspective. So for me, going into a meeting, it's really valuable for me to go in knowing what the agenda is, what we're going to be talking about, so that because I'm an introvert, I process things more slowly before I verbalize. And she is the type who can riff very quickly off of ideas. So we do try to make our materials available. We know exactly what we're going to be talking about. We've got an idea of what the agenda is. So I have time to prepare for it. But then at the same time, because we're going to be together, she has the ability to, also interpersonally react.
Well, and I've had to learn, and it took me a long time to learn this, to shut up in these meetings. Is just stop talking or notice, because obviously we're not the only people in these meetings. There are other extroverts who talk over you and who don't feel comfortable talking. Mm-hmm. And so I've kind of made it my mission to go, wait, stop. You stop talking. Mikalee has something to say. Wait, so-and-so has something to say. Because you can see it on their face that they have something to say, but it's hard when you have big personalities kind of talking over on top of each other.
And it really seems like you guys are taking advantage of every aspect of people's personality, how they work, how they do everything that they do to perform their job in PR.
Well, and that's exactly, I think it's so intentional. And I love that about, working virtually, is that we do really go in with the thought in mind of this is what we'd like to accomplish. And we know, obviously from working, we've both been there for about 5-6 years. So we know the dynamic and we're able to read it, but at the same time, really take advantage of everyone's best assets in these meetings. And the other part of it is really taking time to be interpersonal with each other. Because we work virtually, we don't have the water cooler. So literally on Glip, we have a channel that's called Water Cooler, where we can just post funny things that we think about or find.
That we saw on the internet, or did you see that commercial and how funny it was? Or I went to this movie this weekend, or...
Or we start meetings for the most part with sort of ideas or things about like our lives, because we don't have that interpersonal all the time 24/7 where we know what's going on with her daughter or my children or whatever. And so we get to talk about that and say, okay, this was the best part of my weekend and this was the absolute worst or whatever. It just gives us some insight into people.
And you guys really, from an outsider's perspective, avoid a lot of that loathing of coworkers where it seems like you guys are legitimately excited to
Except
see
for
one
Mikalee.
another.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. No, it's true, though. I mean, I really do think we have the best of all worlds because we get to benefit from each other and our idiosyncrasies and see and experience them, while at the same time, we get to be by ourselves and we get to, be autonomous in how we structure things a little bit more. So it is the best of both worlds.
Well, and on that note, we all have a different biorhythm. We have different times when we're super creative or a time when we want to be with people. So for me, I'm super creative first thing in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning until about 11. And then it's like, okay, let's go talk to people. Or, and in the afternoon, I get tired and I get my energy from other people, being around other people. So if I can schedule my day like that, whereas before I might be in an office at 10 o'clock in the morning and people keep talking to me when I'm trying to write and trying to be creative and they just keep distracting me. Here I can just go, okay, not answering email for here. I'm going to be creative. Mikalee's super creative in the middle of the night, like I think around 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Yeah, that's the best time.
So I'll come in at 6 and go on, and she's got all this stuff up there for me. And then by the time she's dropped off her daughter at school and she's back online, I've responded to her. So it works well with and on that too, like with our kids. We all have lives, and Edward is all about work-life balance. So if you have to go drop off your kid at soccer practice at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you go do that, and you make up the time at 7 or whenever you want to. So everybody gets taken care of, including our families.
And Edward's title is CEO, correct?
President CEO.
President CEO.
He's the name on the door.
Yeah, he's Estipona.
Speaking of, that hierarchy, I'd love to ask you guys, how did you guys go about actually establishing this positive, almost corporate culture? I know it's still a team of around 20, if I'm not mistaken.
We're smaller than that.
Smaller than 20, under 20.
Yeah.
How did you guys go about establishing like this positive nature towards coworkers and this culture, really?
Well, we actually, it's funny, we realized it was a little bit organic. We all kind of came at it with the same values, but when we sat down and did what's it called when y'all get together and talk?
Strategy session? Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, like a retreat.
A retreat. So we had a retreat where we started talking about what do we stand for, what are our values, and can I cuss on this?
Sure.
Okay.
No.
We came up with the no a-hole policy. And basically what we realized is that all of us put our heart and our soul into what we do.
And we genuinely like each other.
And we get very excited. And we get very excited about our clients. We get very excited about what we do. And so if you have somebody, and we've all worked with them, who don't appreciate what you do, and they maybe don't say please or thank you, and this is coworkers and clients, it's a buzzkill. And so we try really hard to associate ourselves with people like that who are generally positive. And obviously this sounds all Pollyanna. We're not all positive all the time, but in general, respectful toward one another.
It sounds like you have a culture of trust with each other as well. You know that it's going to be done, whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., it's going to be done.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things. We are responsible for ourselves. Nobody's standing over your shoulder. Nobody's coming and making sure that you did the thing. You do the thing. And we appreciate and value that we get this freedom. And so you don't want to mess that up.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a big deal.
And Kathie, you have a really unique perspective on this because you work in a more traditional agency fashion where you go to an office most days. You have more in-person time with your employees. Do you have any questions for our guests here as far as, how it contrasts a normal day for you?
Well, it's a great question because we work kind of a hybrid model because we are bringing young people into the fold. And one of the things that our younger employees have told us is that it's very important for them to be flexible. So we have work from home days that they do. We also kind of subscribe to that same theory that people have energy at different times of the day. And we really feel that we, as creative people, need to embrace when we have our energy surges, whether it's I've got one of my employees is a late night person. I'm a really early person. You might see an email from me at 2 a.m. So with that in mind, we're kind of a hybrid model that way. It's a little weird because when we're in the office and we think people are going to be there and they're not, it's quiet. And sometimes that's really good. As a writer, I know I go home and I work from home on days I need to write. So we really try to embrace that whole idea as well. And yet we have a home base.
And that's a really good point. There are different types of tasks, I think, that require different types of settings, right? So for writers, and many of us in this room are writers, yes, quiet, I think, is so valuable. But sometimes, if there's a piece that we're trying to brainstorm creatively, that it looks like, there's more input and design, that is something that we like to do a little bit more together. So,
Yeah.
And then something that's always perplexed me about your guys' agencies, especially Estipona, is how you guys deal with client relations as well. And I'd love to talk about when is the time really to pick up a phone, and when is that contrasted by a time to actually meet in person, or can this task really be accomplished over text messaging? Or how do you guys determine the best way to interact with a client versus maybe touching on each other as well? How do you communicate in that way, or decide what is the best way to move forward?
So we meet with our clients on a regular basis in person. In-person meetings at least, once a month, go in with an agenda. These are all the things we need to talk about, kind of brainstorm with them. We don't present, or we try really hard not to present creative through email. Because you want to talk about what went into it, what we're thinking, and we've all seen it and we've all done it, where you send over taglines to a client and they're like, yeah, no, this isn't, because they don't understand why, and they're not going to, they can't be expected to read pages and pages of strategy. You want to have a conversation, and you want to have that either in person or through teleconferencing. You want to be able to talk like that. But I think the big one, and we were talking about this before, and we've all done this too, where you go back and forth on email and it's like, they don't understand what I'm saying. And so just pick up the phone, and instead of 27 emails back and forth, we can solve it in a minute.
I mean, Kathie, we had this experience today with the podcast with Allison and her episodes that we recorded earlier. It's just, there's so many things that we can go back and forth and not be able to convey the nuances of what we're saying over an email, where even over the phone, having the fluctuation in voice and being able to say and understand is so much more needed, even in this digital world.
The bottom line, I think, is that every one of us reads as we would, in our inside voice, like the inside of our head's voice. And that's rarely correct. So sometimes just being able to have the nonverbal cues there, like the tones or the vocal inflections or whatever it is, or even just the face, it's so helpful.
Well, and the other thing is conflict. And I notice this a lot. Well, I notice this a lot with everybody. I was gonna stereotype young people, but it's everybody. You don't want to have hard conversations. We don't want to have hard conversations. We don't want to bring up something bad, and so we text it instead of calling, which is the worst thing you can possibly do, because now the other person is on the other end reading this, knowing that you're upset about something, and doing all the things in their head. Whereas if you can just say, "Hey, love you," and this thing, and you can just solve it. And I found that most of the time you can solve it within 10 minutes, depending on how bad it is. But I think we way too fast go to digital when we don't want to deal with something.
So touching on that and how we've changed our communication and how rapidly it is changing now, we're focusing more on Twitter, Snapchat, things like that, to rely on these tools for our interpersonal communication, especially people of my generation and younger. Have you guys noticed any major changes, or what you guys have to do in a day-to-day that has changed because of the evolution of these tools and Twitter coming out and reliance on these things? Is there really any big difference between maybe 10, 15 years ago when these things were just emerging to nowadays that you guys really notice as an agency?
Well, I think one of the keys is that we're finding that going back to the way we used to do things is actually super valuable, because we're all very much wired to think social media and to think digital advertising. And right now, one of the things that as an agency we've recently kind of started to rediscover is the art of actually speaking to the people that we're trying to market and help our clients represent. So, for example, focus groups. I don't think we had done them for quite a while. And we've been, like most other agencies, focused on things like the digital advertising and marketing. And
getting our research, from the internet.
Right. And there's so much value. Just recently, we had a client that we had absolute opinions going in on because we're in this. We're mired in the day-to-day of our clients and trying to think strategy. And so we go in thinking we know. And we went into this focus group thinking we had a thought about what the group would say. And they said the exact opposite. And it was so helpful to see and hear from their perspective because we were there in the room talking about the hard things.
And they all agreed. They all agreed. So this wasn't something that was just an outlier. It was all of them said, oh, yeah, totally like that.
Do you guys get any kind of pushback from clients on, because this kind of research can get pricey really quickly, firsthand going out and doing the research yourself. And that's not a lot of what a client may see on the back end. How do you guys explain that to a client as well?
I think it's, talking about the return on the investment because you're going to get much better results from actually talking to a person the way they'd like to be talked to. That's the whole point, of what we do is trying to communicate in a way that the audience can best understand and hear it and realize it. And so the second you explained that, hearing it straight from the people you're going to be talking to and then developing strategy based on that, yeah, it might be a little bit more expensive up front, but your return on investment is going to be so much quicker and so much better for both the receiver of the information and the person trying to send it out.
And I think that's especially critical. We're talking to diverse audiences. So you're talking to your target audience oftentimes is a different demographic, different psychographic than your client or than we are. And so when you're talking to people like that, and again, because some of those questions are sensitive, because you are talking about values and things that are different between us, and you can't replicate that. It would be very difficult to replicate that without in-person communication. I had to. We were in a meeting the other day, and we had somebody who was just kind of going off on. Well, yeah, everybody can do that. Everybody knows that's what you do, and I had to shut him down a little bit because that's not how everybody does it. But I got what he was saying because we're the same. I mean, he was a hardcore extrovert. He was like, yeah, it's not hard. You just walk in a room and you talk to people. And he was a little bit dismissive of everybody else. And I was like, yeah, no. And it had to be me because I'm the same, and because I could say with a smile on my face with love. Yeah, I used to think that too, but I've had to learn.
It's really taking a page from understanding and really trying to approach it from the other person's point of view, which seems like a theme throughout our entire conversation, is that if you seek to understand the other person, that's going to get you so much farther than trying to assume anything about them.
Absolutely.
And that can even be conveyed when you're doing this online research and reading into the material maybe in a way where it's not how it was written. And you guys make a great point of saying that doing the research yourself is really the only way to get past that.
Well, I mean, to that point, really, because there's so much information out there available at our fingertips all the time, you can pretty much, going into a problem, you can craft the research in a way that speaks to what you think the answer is because it's all out there, right? You can find an answer to support that whatever premise is. So to go authentically to the people who will be receiving the information and to ask them interpersonally instead of trying to take what you think in your head is the solution and then finding research to support that is so much more powerful.
But even, I get very tired of hearing people talk about the millennials and their ways and how they do things. And because obviously every generation gets cast as slackers in their 20s. We all do. And it's not fair. It's not fair. But one of the reasons that I know that in my heart is because I'm surrounded by young people all the time in my house, at work, at all these different places. And I know how they think. I know how deep they are. I know how much they care. I know how hard they work. And, not to stereotype the other way, but it's not fair. And oftentimes people who talk like that don't know any young people. They're not spending time with young people. And it's like you have to spend one-on-one time, and to your point, Evan, you have to care what they say. You can't just dismiss it as, natterings of people who don't understand.
Yeah, and you can expound upon that onto any kind of population of people, whether it be young, old, or any other demographic.
Different ethnic groups, different LGBTQ. I mean, you have to, and we try to do that too, as much as we can to mix it up, so that we're getting people from different perspectives, because I can't make assumptions based on an experience I've never had.
And of course, the caveat is we have to share with the client, this is not a statistically significant, representative, scientifically sound thing, but it has so much value. The actual interpersonal, the direct feedback. I mean, we've done focus groups where we actually run taglines by, and it's, by the group. And it's amazing to see that visceral and quick, immediate reaction. We don't give them a lot of prep, so they don't go in sensitized to anything. They are just actually reacting in the moment to, something that we'd like to send out there. And, there's so much power in being able to see that visceral reaction.
And their perception of words sometimes.
So true.
It's a very different perception than what we were expecting or when we wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird that things like even putting a period in the wrong place on a tweet now implies aggression versus a passive tweet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those small nuances and even smaller details that you're never going to be able to pull out of just reading an article or reading about something.
And again, because our voice in our head is reading whatever the copy is, we're totally comfortable with it. It's, finding somebody else to say, oh gosh, that's not what I heard. That's amazing.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, I wanted to go back and answer one of your questions before about how things have changed. So marketing, advertising used to be one way. We would put the information out and maybe our clients would let us know what somebody said later. But hardly ever did the people we're working with are not usually the people on the front line, so they don't even know what was said. So now with social media, with Twitter and with Facebook and Instagram, we get instant gratification. We put something out, they comment, and it's like, oh, that's, it's really valuable. And I love that about the world we live in now, about the interactivity, that we don't control the message anymore. We can try.
And from a marketing perspective, it makes it so much more valuable for us to be able to hear what people are saying and then immediately, potentially, alter, tweak the message, refine it a little bit, because we get that two-way communication as opposed to the didactic, I'm going to stand here and deliver my message and you're just going to receive it and go on your merry way. We actually get that instant feedback, and we're able to really craft campaigns around that because we know we can be flexible.
And you just reminded me, one of the other ways instant feedback is speaking engagements. Mikalee's done a couple recently. I've done them before, where you stand up and talk about something, and as you're speaking, you can actually look at the room, see how they're reacting to you, and then look at the questions they ask. And we will send our clients out and do this too, to go out on speak to actual people who are their actual potential audience, and use that as an informal focus group.
Yeah, we actually do really look at that as, especially the time before, the time after, and obviously the time when you're in the middle of a presentation, because you get people who come up to you and say, okay, about this point. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that's not something I had thought about, but it's something now I know, again, to refine the message a little bit.
I love how you guys say where this is almost an even bigger focus group, where taking advantage of a situation that could be viewed as exposure and taking it as research. And those small tools and ways of looking at something differently is what I think that you guys really bring to the table as a virtual agency. Is there any examples or things that you could think of in a speaking engagement where it's changed the way that you've interacted with a client or how that client has interacted with an audience, like before versus after this individual gave their speaking engagement? What was the real change?
I can speak, I think, personally to it. I just a few weeks ago gave a speech about how to rewire your brain towards positivity. And what basically the focus is on trying to, obviously we work better when we have things framed in a positive perspective, and science backs that up. There's a lot of research. Examples like, writing down things you're grateful for. There was a good reminder in the fact that I think it was a question from the audience about what happens when you're really in the dumps, when there's a serious situation. And, it just kind of helped. And actually, I just wrote an article about something called toxic positivity, which is when you say, oh, don't worry, be happy, everything's fine, reframe it to a
things
positive.
happen for a reason.
Yeah. And so that feedback in that presentation talking about positivity, it helped me to understand that we actually have sort of this epidemic culturally of this toxic positivity where if I complain at all, I'm not putting it out into the universe that things are great and that I'm going to be inviting negativity. That's not the case. And there are times and places where, you cannot be positive, and we have to be okay with that. And so, a direct result of the speaking engagement resulted in another, opportunity for us to talk about something I think culturally that's happening, and, that they were able to help me sort of refine and see.
And just, so a little plug, that was we have a website called justthepositive.com that we released last year as kind of an anecdote to all the negativity that's happening online nowadays, particularly on social media. So it's positive stories of things doing amazing things and things that our readers can do as well to make the world a better place. And so it was interesting reading Mikalee's story yesterday about toxic positivity because it sounded on its surface like it was the opposite of what we were espousing. But when you think about it, and again, because I watched her do this presentation and I heard the interaction, we can't just all be all happy, positive all the time. It's not realistic and it's not healthy. And so being realistic about it was an interesting take.
So to touch on those kinds of darker times, how would you guys work through that as a virtual agency? Because like we're saying, we can't always be like, we're the super happy agency that we're going to talk to each other only in a positive way through tools like Glip and in a virtual way. I feel like it would be even more complicated to work through those times.
So I'm a big fan of conflict resolution.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of conflict resolution because I have realized that if somebody is being distant or weird or a little bit not super effusive in responding to me, that I build up things in my head and I'm almost always wrong. And I will assume that they're mad at me and it's something I did, and I'll sit there and my brain will get all swirly while I'm trying to figure out what did I do and how do I. And I've realized that the solution to that is to say, hey, have I upset you in some way? And then 9 times out of 10, they'll say, no, why? And I'll say, well, because you've been kind of distant with me. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I'm mad at my kid or, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay. And then I can go on about my day. So I'm not wasting brain space trying to figure out what I did wrong. And if I did do something wrong, or if there's something that we need to fix, I need to know what that is. And I think it's way too easy sometimes just to let it fester until it gets bigger.
Yeah. And to Kathie's point on that, that actually takes a lot of trust. That's not something that a new team necessarily can feel comfortable coming together and doing. But I can tell you, just based on Jackie and I have had multiple conversations about this where I'm being aloof and she says, what's going on? Or she's being aggressive and I'm saying, what's going on? Not that is always the case.
Never happens.
But no, and it does take the trust and it's almost the acknowledgement that whatever happens, we always have each other's best interests at heart at the end of the day. It's not all going to be hearts, flowers, rainbows, and unicorns, and we get that. But just opening those channels of communication and making sure we're all on the same page, it's never a bad thing.
Well, and I told Mikalee that she's side weird.
Yes. Apparently, I have a breathing problem.
Because she does this thing when she's thinking, and she'll go, and I was taking that as aggressive. Like she was exasperated by something that had gone on, with something that somebody had said that she was upset about. And I was just like, so Mikalee, the breathing, what is that? A sign that you do. And she wasn't even aware of it.
Definitely not aware, but now I'm very aware of my breathing. I do not breathe judgmentally anymore. I'm cured.
It's something that we've talked about in our office as well as how do we receive information. We think a lot of times about our clients and their audiences or their publics about how they receive information. So we brought it internally. I'm very much, give me the bullets. I got to go. I got to move on. I have people on my team who are I want some small talk. I want you to fluff it up a little bit for me because I feel that you're being aggressive with me when you just go boink, boink, boink and move on. So we've all worked at adapting our own internal communication styles as well for how people receive that information inside.
Or even the different levels of reward you need. Some people are, very much needing someone to say, you've done an amazing job today. Thank you for being you. And other people are just like, I'm good. I got the internal reward system going on. I'm totally fine. So that's another aspect of this.
But you know what's interesting about what you say, Kathie? We are bringing in a speaker for one of the organizations I work with who's talking about multi-generational workplace and how different generations communicate. And she pointed out this thing about Gen X. And as soon as she pointed out, I'm like, oh, yeah. Like everybody I know who's in Gen X does this, where we do small talk for a minute or two and then go, so. And we switch to business. And we all do it. And we all use the word so. So here's why I'm here.
That's so true.
And I was like, wow, I had no idea that was generational. But it's like now that you know it, it's like, okay, that's how we communicate.
I think you guys have come to this really nice balance between mastering digital communication and leveraging interpersonal connection and the value of being in person.
Yeah, I think we just need to not ever do one or the other. Like we need to just, again, it's the best of both worlds that gives us the best results, right?
Do you guys have any last minute lessons that we could take from a virtual agency or really concise concluding thoughts?
I think that you cannot overvalue the power of a phone or an in-person meeting. And there's been times when I've been just stuck, sitting in my office by myself in my house with these two little dogs and just stuck. And I'm like, I'll just pick up the phone. Mikalee, what about this? And sometimes it's just me saying it out loud that helps me get unstuck, but saying it to her and then she'll say something and I'm like, oh, I'm good. Thank you. And it's 30 seconds. Whereas I could sit there, banging my head on my desk for an hour the other way. So I used to say this to my students when I was teaching up here at UNR, they were so reluctant to pick up the phone. They wanted everything to be done through texting and through email. And it's just way too easy to ignore that. You can ignore an email so easy, but if you have a phone message, you need to respond to that, or you need to answer the phone.
And to that point, though, I think it's also really important for us to consider the fact that everyone's wired differently, that we all bring different personalities to the table, and that one person's, picking up the phone can actually be a very hard thing for another person to do. So it's just recognizing and sort of embracing all different personality types in the workplace and trying to just a little bit, make adjustments for everyone so that everyone feels comfortable in their interpersonal communication.
Well, and actually, I'm sorry, it's just something to leave this on, is that we are all different.
Yeah.
Is that we are all different, and we should never be making assumptions about other people based on our own experience. There's so many different things. Even if somebody who has the exact same, same gender, same age, same socioeconomic place, both single moms, still completely different experiences. And I should not base what I think other people are going to say based on my own experience.
Kathie, any last minute questions or conclusions?
No, I think I agree with everything you said. You said it so beautifully. It's all about relationships and how we manage them and always keeping that in mind when we communicate with others.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Better PR, a podcast by PRSA Sierra Nevada. Today's episode has been brought to you by In Plain Sight Marketing. Kathie, you want to give a plug?
Absolutely. We are at ipsmllc.com. We're a full-service marketing and public relations agency in Carson City, Nevada. I can be reached at Kathie at inplainsightllc.com. That's Kathie, Kathie, at inplainsightllc.com.
Mikalee, where could people ask further questions to you about?
Oh, reach out to us at the Estipona Group for sure. So I'm Mikalee at estiponagroup.com, and that's Mikalee. And Jackie, of course, Jackie at estiponagroup.com.
Jackie, any last plugs for you?
No. It's like you say
you
that.
Stumped her.
Yeah, no, I'm working on so many things at the same time. And it's like, which thing to promote? No, I'm good.
Well, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.